Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Buncombe County Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 26th of 2025. If we can go quickly through our housekeeping, that would be helpful. So were there any changes to the agenda? If none, do I hear a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the agenda is approved. Approve or revise the meeting minutes. Do I have any changes to the meeting minutes? Hearing no comments, I move that we approve the meeting minutes. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, then the meeting minutes are approved. I'll be real honest with everybody. This is going to be a tough allocation here. I want to just at least share that as we look at, for example, the expenditure reports, I mean, we were hit by the hurricane Helene. So when, for example, if we look at the Buncombe County, and Zach, if you could bring that up, that'd be super.
The Buncombe County
Units of service.
Service report.
You'll see, I guess what jumped out at me first was the Council on Aging on the very top line. And their nutrition program. Now, Billy, do you have, I know they were shut down. Is there any update on their capacity to provide service or, oh, I'm sorry, Zach. Yeah.
So I just monitored them the other day. They are working on getting their spending back to where it should be. They are actually going to take units that were billed to ARPA funding and bill them to Home and Community Care Block Grant funding in hopes to kind of salvage some of those units, because with the ARPA funding, they're able to provide grab and go meals at the sites that are still working on cleanup, Helene cleanup and things like that. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of more movement in their funding within the coming month or two when they get those kind of sorted out, but they are working to try and get back to where they should after Helene. They got hit pretty bad. I mean, I'm sure all of y'all heard all of their nutrition sites were closed for a brief while. There was a transition in the leadership for nutrition for the nutrition coordinator there, and the new one is kind of learning as they go. They do already have a base of knowledge because I believe she was working there before the previous nutrition coordinator left. And so Black Mountain was damaged, and then if that wasn't enough, Grove Street and oh gosh, what's the other one? Shiloh. They were notified that there's potential lead in the pipes. So that's why they're so behind. It was not an opportune time for congregate meals. So like I said, they're hopefully going to switch some units from ARPA over to Home Community Care Block Grant to use up some of that funding.
If you could encourage them to do that quickly, because I think we all agreed that April was going to be the next meeting was going to be our time to start telling folks we need to move money around.
Yeah.
Especially with the county efforts that need contracts. So if you could follow up with that, I'd appreciate it. The other thing that kind of, and I think also was probably hit by the storm, was the in-home aid level 2. And I don't know if anyone here can speak to that.
I mean, yes, there were times when people were not able to be served and not able to have aids and that type of thing. But there may end up being money that's available for
Okay.
that. So,
Because I also looked and saw that the level 1 has overspent, so there's the possibility to move. Right, move that to there. So that's something to keep an eye on.
yes,
And then, kind of the sad news I thought was, looking down at the non-units is, United Community Development. And Dee has looked like she's not been able to spend anything.
So she has stated that there was a project that was completed and she was going to put it into ARMS, and I have not yet seen it go into ARMS. I'm hoping to see that next month because anytime a new provider comes on board, I have to monitor them within the first year of service. And if there's no information, I can't monitor. And also, you know, with nothing claimed in ARMS, that work has been done. You know, from whatever resources they have, because we have not reimbursed them yet for that. Project, so. But communicating with Dee, it sounds like there's a substantial amount that she's going to be relinquishing to us, because I think the project was only around $600 or so.
And I noticed she did not submit an application for the FY 26. So, again, I hate to put it on you, but if you could have a serious conversation with her. That's, I'm trying to avoid the last month shuffle as much as possible.
I mean, there's honestly no way to avoid it because it's pennies and dimes at that point, and it still has to get moved to 0, so.
So does anybody else have any observations on the units of service report?
Because the legal is completely spent out, that's not unusual to know.
And Mountain Mobility's hit 100% too. So, which is not unusual for them either. Well, that's February, so let's see. Oh, the only other note I made to myself is perhaps with Mountain Care moving some of the money. Or moving, they seem to have overspent with transportation. Which I was not surprised with, but they're underspent with the other 2 programs, so. That might be within their organization. Is it easier to transfer within the organization, or is it really?
Any movement of funding results in a budget, so relinquishing movement within any of that will result in a budget. Ultimately, in my dream world, they will have overspent exactly what they haven't spent, and then that way money can be moved to where it needs to be, and there's no second budget amendment that needs to happen for a different provider, but.
It's,
So I think Zach and I, we both got an email from Nicole Staton at Mountain Care.
Yeah,
And their current reimbursement rate is $42 per mile. And that's what they submitted when the grant application was submitted, but after the money was allocated, then Mountain Mobility increased the cost per mile.
per mile or per trip.
She said per mile. And she said, well, so the $42 rate sometimes covers the average net cost per trip. but some, often it doesn't, so she was asking if they would like to increase their reimbursement rate to $45 per trip. But that would be something the committee would have to vote on. And they also would like, if there's any money left over, they'd like some of the reallocated funding, but I have gotten emails from Michael Barnett at Jewish Family Services. He asked me first about any money to be reallocated. And then I got this email from Nicole. And then
And Nicole is Mountain Care, right?
Mountain Care, and then Meals on Wheels asked for if there's any money left over to be reallocated to them.
So we've already had a request from Jewish Family Services and Meals on Wheels for any leftover funds.
Yes.
And then did I just hear that the committee has to vote on approving the change of the rate?
They would have that.
Yeah, you would, because again, with the in-home aid rate increase that we did last year, any rate increase that happens, unit rate increase that happens, occurs in arrears. So every previous unit that had been reimbursed will get an extra $3 added to it.
So then they will have maxed out, most likely. When they get with that retro
Yeah.
increase. Well, let's see. Do we have discussion about the request from Mountain Care about raising the rate from 42 a mile to 40 a mile, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so
42
in the
more.
first, in the first paragraph said it's $42, it's known as the cost per mile, but then later on, she says 45 per trip.
I think,
That is per trip.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Really nice view.
those units are
Yes,
only
it's
measured in
somehow.
a one-way trip.
Okay, so the discussion is, do we raise the trip price? From 42 to 45, which would incur a retro allocation all the way back to the beginning of the grant.
Is there, Zach, is there logic as to why it has to cover the whole grant period? As opposed to
It's the
one change?
limitation of arms. The aging resource management system is 20+ years old, so it has no way to put a stop at one point and then it begin at another. It just counts for the entire fiscal year.
I'm tempted to ask them just to hold it until the next period.
I feel the same. I feel like we're too close to, that money for.
Ideally, we want to be able to adjust the system, but we can't do that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, is it possible to ask how many trips would be impacted and what would the dollar amount be?
So their current, so their total HCCBG units provided currently are 1166. 1166 times $3,498 is what we would be adding to their
3,000, how much?
$3,498 is what they would be getting paid in arrears.
It's not really their fault when they received the money and then Mountain Mobility increased the cost after they received their allocation.
mean, I sort of understand that, but I think retroactively changing the rates is kind of a bad precedent. Um, possibly it can be justified. But I would be nervous about telling anybody.
Well, having dealt with legacy computer systems that are older than dirt, it's not really, we can't adjust the system, so we can't really say when Mountain Mobility upped your trip rate in like, I don't know, January. We'll only up it in January to cover your costs. That's, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Eileen, but I don't think, we either approve it or we don't approve it, or there's no way to allocate or make it more compartmentalized, I guess, per month.
Is there a more formalized way to do this, like with them, amending their request or something like that?
Are they gonna have to have another budget, Zach? Which means
Okay.
most likely they're gonna have to have another budget if we move money around. So does it make sense that we wait till April and then they maybe only have to do budgeting once?
Yeah, I
They
mean,
get one or the other. They get this or they get a little extra money.
Or maybe they get both. I don't know. But I'd hate for them to do all that work and for me, I'm sorry, but the $3,500 doesn't seem like a lot for all that work. So I'd rather them do the work one time and maybe get more benefit. Greg, you have any comments?
Me?
You can say no.
Well, I'm clearly ignorant here, but they're asking for more money. But we've allocated all of FY 25 money, have we not?
Yes.
So do we have a savings account or?
Well, there's a possibility that, as we discussed, that there'd be money moving around because some providers haven't.
Oh, give backs?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I was trying to think where the money's coming from.
No.
well, also with them being underspent in adult daycare and adult day health, potentially the money could come from within. So if they don't spend all of their adult daycare and adult day health, they could just move that over to transportation.
So do we need to have that discussion with them about them, their likely projection, whether they could do that or not, or no?
I think the email requesting the increase. How do I say this? The email requesting the increase is separate from the moving of the money. In my mind.
Yes.
Yeah, it's separate from moving of the money. And I am wondering if if we'll have a clearer picture in the next month. That's what I'm kind of hoping for.
So we're gonna ask them to wait. We want to get proposals here, ask them to wait till we're moving it.
Ask them to say we have discussed it, but we believe we need to look at next month's financials before we make a final decision. Is that kind of what I'm hearing from some folks?
Yeah, I think so.
I think
that's
so.
fair.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to acknowledge Mountain Care's request for a per trip increase of $3 and communicate to them that we would like to make a final decision at our next meeting. Does that make sense? Is that okay? All right, so that's the motion.
Say,
Okay, all in favor?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Eileen?
I said, yeah.
Okay, I didn't see, I'm sorry. Okay, it looks like it's unanimous and we will, share with them that we will finalize the decision next time. Anything else, Billy? Any other communications from these folks?
Not from the HCC funded providers. I did reach out to Unite asking if they would be spending all of their allocation, but the executive director is in until the 27th, so I did send it to her second person in charge too, but he didn't answer me, so I don't have any updates on that. Working Wheels will meet their obligation of providing 16 car repairs by the end of the year, so they'll be spending their allocation. And then I emailed Blue Ridge Pride and because they didn't submit an invoice until today, and they said that they were gonna spend their allocation as well.
So this is, these are the Buncombe County Supplemental Aging Funds, which have to go through the county's contract and process if we move money around, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And so these folks, yeah, Unite. On track, I think will be okay, because it's now tax season.
Got
I
it.
think they will be okay. Memory care. They should be okay and perhaps even be able to take some funds. In my opinion, I don't know. The folks who have seen the history. I guess I'm just a little disappointed with Blue Ridge Pride. And the in-home aid program, I think it got hit by the storm.
Well, Blue Ridge Pride did say back in November and December that they foresaw spending the bulk of their money January till June. So that's why there were some spaces like July, October, and September, and October. So they said that's when they would be spending the bulk of their money.
Well, I'll be optimistic too, Billy. I won't count them out yet. Although I will say, as a accountant type person, sending in a late invoice is not a good thing. So any other comments, questions, concern about the supplemental aging funds?
Any word on next year?
Which kind of leads into our next agenda topic, which is the report on our advocacy efforts. And I need to give a shout out to Suzanne, Eileen, and Melissa for helping out. Their feedback was great. Suzanne, you want to share what your endeavors?
I made an attempt to get us in front of the commissioners. Sent out a bulk email, copied the clerk of the commission. As I said in the email, which was wasn't 10,000 words, you know, I followed up by telephone several times. And this is the first time I've ever tried to get in front of someone and was totally unsuccessful. I wasn't confident I was gonna get plugged into one of the commissioners. I thought that was at best 50-50. I couldn't even get to the clerk. I couldn't even get someone to give me a polite, hi there, sorry. We're busy. Nothing. This is a first. Well, let's just say, I'm not quite sure what to make of it. You know, I wasn't calling them 4 times a day, every day for a week. There was one day, I think I put in 2 calls, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, so it's like 4 or 5 calls, something like that. Got through to someone once. And no one was in the office who could speak to me. And she said, well, I can't help you, such and such is out of the office, I can't give you that person's phone number. But by the time that we reached the back end of this, we were within a week of the 20th. So that was a total wash. I am disappointed and puzzled to have to report.
Well, I will share, I did the public comment at the meetings. And, I got moral support from folks, coming in the room. And, I did 3 meetings and the last one was the Tuesday before the 20th. And, by the 3rd public comment, the chairwoman, Amanda Edwards, pronounced my last name correctly. So I was encouraged, but I made, I tried to make, a point and I tried to at least be in front of them. So they don't ever say anything, they just let you speak. And Eileen, you want to share what?
Yeah, I go to the Democratic Party things and, Martin Moore spoke at our, precinct meeting. And he mentioned when he was going through what Buncombe County does for people, he said, provides funding for aging in place. So he at least picked up on that.
So every little bit helps.
So I think they do hear what you're saying, but it's, it's not like they have offices in the courthouse. I mean, it's a part-time job. Everybody else has their own jobs.
I thought there was some standard that they or someone was supposed to call someone back within 24, 48 hours.
Standard in social work.
I have never heard of anything like that. I mean, you do get to talk to them if you go to Democratic Party things. If you want to do that.
Yeah.
Which I do from time to time. And, I did talk to him. He came over to talk to my table and so but I didn't say anything about that.
I'm trying
I'm
to.
sorry. I
No,
should
that's
have.
okay.
Yes.
I'm just trying to remember what district he's in.
Is, they keep changing the numbers. I think it's 3. It was 3.
That's okay. At least they heard us.
Yeah.
At least they heard us. And Billy?
Oh, I just wanted to mention that Allison has been doing some advocacy for the SAF funding. Her first day back on vacation, I learned that you can tell that you wrote a letter advocating.
Oh, we were just having to put budget things in and I just submitted and said, these are the services that will be lost. Billy and I are actually going before the HHS board on Friday, a subcommittee of the board, and part of what we're talking about are what could be the impact of funding being lost and just working on the slides, and Billy did a great job with some slides related to that actually, who had sent that email out?
Well, like Susan had sent the email to the grantees and then
Yeah.
All those comments?
And then Suzanne was helpful because she put together a short blurb on the impact, so I looked at both and put a 1-sentence impact on what would happen if the funding was lost for all the funded providers.
So Commissioner does sit on that board, so we'll be talking about that. I will say that, we had this, we thought the timeline was gonna be March 20th, and we do have some updated dates, so apparently they did like a work session. And then it looks like they're doing another one on April 22nd. And then, they are doing, it says May 6th, budget message during formal county commissioner meeting. And then May 20th, public hearing on proposed budget, and then June 3rd, approval of fiscal year 26 budget. And I was told that the money went through, like, as we were, it's there, like, the $500,000 was not removed from our budget. Not yet. I mean, it could be, right? Like, of what was passed through, like with Avril and went through. So that's at least good. I mean, it still sits there. And so it's just what, the commissioners and what they come up with on the budget. So they're really, really working, obviously looking at the decrease in, funding across the board, the revenue, just, revenue in general. And so that's kind of the timeline that we have. So it could be that we don't know anything until beginning of June.
Can you repeat that online again for me, please?
Absolutely. It was, April 22nd, they have a budget work session. And then, I mean, they're having another work session, but it's related to fire districts and school districts on
Oh.
April 29th. And then May 6th, budget message during formal county commissioners meeting.
May 6th?
Mhm.
Formal.
Mhm. And then May 20th is a public hearing on the proposed budget. And then it says June 3rd, approval of fiscal year 26 budget.
June 3rd?
June 3rd.
Okay,
yeah. And
so-
this is on the website.
If May 20th is a public hearing on the proposed budget, we should know what the proposed budget is before May 20th, right?
I would think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
And I would think hopefully that's what the budget message on May 6th is being presented
Okay.
perhaps. So as to what the budget would be.
Everybody mark your calendars.
What was the June date? 3rd.
June the 3rd.
And in the past, we had to have our our allocations finalized by the end of April,
April,
right?
I mean, we can't even, until we know for sure about the funding, I mean, we can't even open up the Buncombe County Supplemental Aging Fund application, and so.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Well,
Maybe interesting.
it's, I wanna say I heard a little bit of good news with the 500,000 still being in HHS. So, I will, what's the expression? Guarded optimistic, yeah. I'll be optimistic, but I will be guarded. Yeah. Okay, any more conversation about advocacy before we start chatting about the allocations for, block grant? None. Would I like to start off the allocation funding discussion? I would like to read Dan's email. And let's see, he says, I regret that I will not be able to join you for the upcoming in-person meeting. I will be in New York City, with our children and celebrating their birthday month. I have a few thoughts to share with you. The uncertainty in funding is sad and maddening. I could add some other words: scary, disappointing, alarming, gut wrenching. That said, what do? My focus is to fund the most vital services fully, or as fully as possible. I believe that the most vital services are defined by the number of people served, the services capacity to keep people in their home and community. With those two measures, I would start with fully funding transportation, in-home aid, home delivered meals, congregate meals, adult daycare, and information and referral. And I have said He said he would send me the spreadsheet, which he has. I know this is all Plan A, as we must await news from both federal, state, and county funding options. Thank you for your care of our community by being on this committee. Have productive conversation. Cheers and regards.
Could I speak on the other end of that spectrum?
Sure.
Okay, so he's talking about prioritizing by certain criteria, okay? So I just crunched the numbers and I'm not advocating this, I just, it's the other end of the spectrum probably. We started 2.2, which has been flat for years, and then we're not counting a 500,000, so that's 1.7. Per your and I discussion, you're concerned about what, I think we said feds, but it's federal state, hedging our bets on that. So we talked around budgeting around, you and I discussed around 1.5. Okay, so mountain mobility generally is a 500,000 off the top,
Right.
in my experience, so that leaves us with $1 million. And if you take all the if you take all the 13, the Center for Living and Dying, I just didn't even consider that because anyway, so, and the other was $1,280. I'm okay with that. So if I take the other 12, not including the 500,000 at the top of my mobility, the other 12 and add that 1,280, you get $1,186,000 to allocate $1 million toward. And so that's 84%. So if you, I'm just saying, if you funded it 84.3%, you're gonna come in. So that's the other inspector, just for public consumption, okay?
So the 84% is
Last
Applied.
allocations are 20, I'm not even, it's sad to say that requests are like a moot point almost. Because we
Yeah.
can't consider that. So I'm just looking, we don't even have enough to fund what the FY 25 allocations were. So that's the number I'm using, that's the column I'm adding up here. And
So I
so
think we can take each request.
Each
multiply it by
allocation from last
84.
year.
Okay, oh, from
Each.
last year.
from last year, yeah, because we
Alright.
can't come close to funding the request.
83% of
Sorry
last.
to get to that column, even sadly to say.
But then that makes the assumption that you and I, that makes the assumption that rather than using the 1.7 million as an estimate, we decrease it down to 1.5, only because we don't know what the feds are gonna do. And that is not something that, when you and I chatted, that was something that I kind of threw out there, only to kind of start the conversation, considering all the chaos that's going on with the budgeting at the federal level. And what I did do before I came is I wanted to share, since FY 18, this is what we've gotten. So FY 18 was like roughly $1,390,000. Fiscal year 19 was 1,408,000. 20 was 1373. 21 was 1508. 22 was 1501.
1501, you mean $1.5 million or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fiscal year 23 was 1.709. And then 24 was 1,740,000. And then it went back down in 25 to 1,736,000. So my only thought with, rather than using the 1.7, is if it comes in, if we estimate at 1.7 and it comes in lower, then
Hard to
that's,
tell them, take back money.
yeah, I don't wanna,
So we start pessimistic and we're the good guys if we had to.
I mean, that's just, that was a topic for discussion. And if I remember correctly, the final notices come in really late, like, after we make our decision. Late March, late April. But this is a point, if the county is not gonna finalize their budget until
June third.
Or May sixth is the formal. Public, yeah, June third is the final. Do we have to? Does that give us also time? For the feds?
The feds are state.
The Fed is coming down from the older, it comes from the Older Americans Act to the state.
Okay.
From the feds to the state has the obligation to provide matching in some of the categories. Then it comes down to the state level, and I think the area agencies on aging do something with it to allocate it according to whatever their allocation process is. And so,
That's April usually though, right?
Yeah, late April, early May, it just depends. I mean, when the notification gets sent. In regards to your question though, I don't know. I don't know if the county needs the HCCBG dollars to include into their budget, or their final budget. What I need personally is budgets before the fiscal year kicks off, which is
That's July 1 for us.
it's July 1 for us as well, but in arms, we always run a month behind, so I need those budgets by mid-July to put them into arms so people can start claiming funding.
So what I will say is, I would definitely from a finance perspective, as far as contracts and like. Will that impact
will that
with
impact
Olga and
the block
just the
grant?
Buncombe County Supplemental Aging Funds
Like, make
when
that,
they have to be in?
they always have to be into the budget office the last Friday in April.
I'm gonna ask.
So
Let me see what I,
Yeah, ask Olga.
that-
Yeah.
yes, Brianna.
I mean, if we could. I mean, I would like to have I'd like to spend the rest of this time together to really discuss. Trying to map out where this money goes, but I think that if we can follow up. And if we don't have to have it done prior to knowing how much money we have. That would be really lovely. Because like I said. I wanna, if we budget pessimistic, then we're nice and we give them money, but if we budget. It's stable and the feds don't come through, then,
Nobody likes Indian givers.
yeah. So if we can find out if the county does the county need to approve these? I don't know what the process is.
I'm trying to,
Okay,
oh, we'll figure it out.
okay.
Maybe during this meeting, maybe not.
Well,
I'm trying.
I'm not gonna hold you to it during the meeting. I mean, it is late in the day and, it's kind of a complex question.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't,
What was the funding in 2018?
2018 was 1.3. 1.3, yeah. And if you look, I think I've sent it out more than once, and I'm not sure if I sent it out to this group, but the Congressional Research Office has a study. And it clearly shows how the Older Americans Act funding, especially for Title III, which is what we get our money from, we meaning the block grant people. It's been flat. So,
I just know a lot of federal things are trying to get back to the year 2018, a lot of them.
really,
I mean, I really don't see how we can do much without knowing how much money we're gonna have. If there's that much of a gap, I mean, I like the idea of prioritizing organizations and services. I would rather, theoretically, I would rather fully fund a service that's essential than partially fund a service that is not so essential or has other funding,
mhm.
Perhaps what we should be doing today is, rather than debating the numbers, a subject of which we have no real insight or control, but discuss how we might prioritize the programs, which I think is enormously difficult if you ever had any experience advocating for an elderly or disabled person. I don't see any money that we've been asked for this time that I can dismiss. Last year, we had a couple through the Y. We had a hiking program that was not essential and wasn't gonna be of that much benefit to the more poor among us.
Right.
But maybe that's where we start. Are there any of these programs that seem superfluous? Or, I know I have questions about one of them. But are there any obvious deficiencies in terms of what we know about the organization and how they're run? Or any insight that we might have from going about our normal business?
Do we have another list of the programs someplace? I didn't bring my, oh, yeah, computer. And it doesn't work anyway.
You want me to make copies, Cindy?
Yeah,
Sure.
well, I think, prioritizing, and again, I'm gonna look to Dan's email. And the first thing is transportation. And we've already, the commitment has been made in prior years. So we kind of have to, we need to honor that commitment. So the transportation is definitely getting $500,000. The services that may or may not be vital. I guess I'm wondering, and this is me personally, about the two new ones, Mobility Matters and the Center for Conscious Living and Dying.
Can I just say something?
Oh, please.
I actually went to the Center for Conscious Living and Dying today to learn about what they do, and I had a tour, and the director of operations, I've asked her to speak at the next Friendly Buncombe County meeting in April. And I think it would be valuable if everyone, it's gonna be April 16th. From 1 to 2, and she's gonna be speaking about, and it might be helpful if the committee comes to the Age Friendly Buncombe County meeting, and all of you are on the age friendly list, so you can decide if your thoughts about.
Without talking contextually, as I recall from looking at their application, I had a concern because they said everything was provided by volunteers, but then they had a really healthy figure for salaries.
Had the same thought.
I had the same
Yeah.
thought. I couldn't quite, maybe they can answer that in the meeting, because I was curious of the large amount of money with all being volunteers, except for trainers and,
Right.
yeah, a minimal staff.
The service itself, which I think of as a type of hospice care, it can keep people out of nursing homes where the care is often not so hot. They're very expensive, depending on the nursing home. The nursing homes, Susan can speak to this, and they're very difficult to manage. It's like staff turnover, blah, 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 blah. But anything to keep a dying person in their own bed is not just more humane, but it also has, if you want to speak in terms of dollars and cents, it's a more cost-effective approach than putting someone in a nursing home on Medicaid.
And their service also involves the entire family.
Yes.
I took that class and I did the doula thing, and
Yeah.
it's very valuable service.
It most certainly is.
Yeah. Yeah, for all involved.
Yes, and for everyone. I mean, the odds of being fortunate enough to die in your bed when you're asleep. You know, that's like winning the lottery. So,
I mean, I think we can also look at other funding. And I apologize for continuing to pick on Pisco Legal, but they also had like 12 million in revenue, didn't they? Which I think is probably the most of any of our clients.
Didn't we talk at one point about putting in the application? How big is your budget? So we realized how big a piece we were of people's budget.
It's-
Oh,
They did.
you did.
And they did have total revenue, or some of them did.
It's not all of them. I have with me a hard copy of them and, I thought some of them used the, budget. And it made sense. Some of them didn't. I think also we discussed the fact that there is an obligation that we have. That a certain portion goes to legal, but I think if I remember correctly, and I'm looking at Zach again, is that. That was like $6,000 or something. If we looked at, FY 25, what would that number be if it was the minimum?
I mean, another thing about Pisco Legal that I was wondering about was that they did say in their application, they don't contract out. But they do use a whole lot of volunteers. And also, I mean, if you're an attorney in Asheville, you are gently pressured, you know, to do your volunteer work for Pisco Legal Services. So, I mean, I do wonder when I see their, 200%. How many of that was actually paid time and how much was volunteer time?
Susan, the 10,422 is the obligation to legal services. That was fiscal year 25.
So that's if their funding is at the 1.726. So, I mean, one thought is that we have been very generous to Fiscal Legal over the years. And one thought. And I don't want to be the only one talking, so I need to help, you guys need to help me out, is that that's one way to be able to not take money, but say, Pisca, you have a lot of, and when you look at the budget, they seem to have a lot of revenue, and, we really appreciate all your work, but we're really tight this year and we're kind of, gonna have to just cut it down to the minimum. I mean, that's something, that's food for thought. So,
And what would that impact be? Like, the clients they serve?
Are they gonna quit serving people over 65 because they don't get money from us?
I don't know.
No, they're not.
But I'm just saying, they there might be more evictions and homelessness.
they probably have more social capital than employ. Putting pressure on, I'm sure not every lawyer in the county volunteers.
I bet they do.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty close.
I did not know that.
We, if they're 12 million in their budget, we give them 57,000, that's about 0.5% to 1%.
Right.
I'm thinking, right, of their total budget. So we're not really like stopping them dead in their tracks in terms of that.
And if you look at the units of service for February, they're over, 280%. So they've already provided 200, and they've capped at 100, but they've also, these are the, I always have trouble with explaining that column, but anyway, they've spent 280%.
They're always the first to finish their budget.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking there's a great need there because they've always spent the budget, but the bigger picture, if their budget is that big. Then maybe they're going, okay, we're gonna spend all of this first and then we'll rely on these resources. So maybe they're first
Well, I've wondered that because I don't think the services they provide to people over 60 are that much different than the services they provide to anybody else. So we're probably getting, they ask ages and we get the first 260 plus people.
We might be able to agree that of all of our grantees, it's the one that can absorb the biggest hit, relative to services they're able to provide afterwards. That sounds reasonable.
So if I can. Let me see if I can repeat what you said, that because, and it may be in different terms, because they have the highest revenue stream and support from other entities, that us reducing our contribution would not be that dramatic of an impact,
0.5% of it.
half of 1% of their budget.
I mean, as opposed to some organizations where we're 85% of their budget.
Or 100%.
Right.
Yeah, I had a question about a couple of them. It looked like, I mean, I don't know if they didn't know how to do the budget, or that we truly are their only source of income.
Do they have the income qualify for services for physical legal? It's not just age.
They have their own way of figuring that out.
That's based on your income if you want.
It's
It's not just because your age, it's. because your age and-
it's not anything determined by the state. It's the way they determine it.
They stated in the application a certain amount
Yeah,
income threshold.
Oh, okay.
my experience has been they were loose with it. But I haven't done work with them for a long time either, so.
Well, Suzanne, I know you've been sharing some information or conversation with Billy and I, so I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing that with the group. I think it's, I think it's a valid question, so.
When I, during my first go around with the funding, I thought, okay, fine, I'm gonna take a deep dive into these organizations and try to figure out what makes them tick and get a sense of what they think they do and how well they do it. And I was very quickly disabused of that as a realistic approach. The data is just not out there. It's also not our mandate to provide an operational or financial audit. And at the end of the day, what we're left with, money limits aside, is what is the service? What do we think as adults living in the community is the value of that service? Do they make a reasonable argument that they provide that service? But at the end of the day, do we need in-home aid? No one is going to argue that in-home aid services are superfluous. How well do the different organizations deliver that service? I can't speak to that. I haven't been a client. I don't know anyone who has. And sometimes, not everyone, they may do a bang up job, but the person writing the grant application may not have the communication skills to communicate that. So at the end of the day, on some level, we're going on making good faith efforts to come up with reasonable allocations. And this led to, Billy made a comment in the emails back and forth about, I guess it was information and options. There's nobody who's going to make a stronger argument in favor of providing advocacy services to disabled, to the sick, to the elderly, to caregivers. There's an enormous need out there. Being only a fraction of the people who need services, who qualify for services, actually have access to those services because they don't have advocates to help them and they can't advocate for themselves. But Billy said something. Do you want to communicate, explain to me what you had heard?
I mean, you had asked me about like, you had questions about the information and options counseling and how well they were, like, how well are they doing that? But I've had experience recently where I've been getting referrals from Council on Aging and been told that I do case management, which I don't. And I explained, and I've talked to several of these clients several times, and they're under the impression that I do case management, which I don't. And then I asked Allison about it, like, do the social workers in our department do case management? And Allison said, we do it for people that are receiving like adult.
Our programs, right?
The programs. So I was wondering why was I getting these calls when they were funded for information and assistance, you know, and I think options counseling is more like placement, things like that, but you can tell me that if that's right.
Yes, so, I mean, I can speak to it a little bit too. I just monitored them on the 14th. They had a temp, individual at the front desk, and they were gonna have a full-time person there the next day, or the next week, so it could be just lack of knowledge from the temporary employee that was at the front desk. Currently, they have not served any information and options counseling to any client. There was only one person who was vetted for it who declined the information and options counseling. So all they have been funded for was the information and assistance. On top of that, there has been massive staff turnover at Council on Aging. Rachel Miller and Emily Benson both left quite suddenly and left Judy Long, who is the interim executive director of Council on Aging, there to kind of figure things out. And I've heard that some of the transition were so quick that nobody really kind of got a full scope of what the job was.
The first two folks you mentioned, were they co-directors, which is to
Yes,
say
they
neither
were.
one was a director, they were just sort of.
They were both co-directors. Rachel Miller and Emily Benson were co-directors. It was something I believe Council on Aging was trying at the time, and
They had a problem with executive management before that, right?
That was like this time last year, wasn't it?
They did,
Yes.
didn't they?
Yes,
Heather Bauer, when Heather Bauer left.
yes.
Yeah. And I thought that was, I mean, what do they have besides somebody on the telephone?
They have staff employees, so Zakit Levine is there as a resource coordinator.
For the information and referral?
Yeah.
They get.
Is she the only one?
She's the information and options counselor. Ren, I can't remember her last name at the current time, but she's trained to be an information and options counselor. Judy has gone through Judy has gone through the information and options counselor management program. So there has to be someone there to manage the information and options counselors, and she went through that program herself. And then, oh gosh, Erin Spring used to be an information and options counselor, but she has since moved into the nutrition coordinator role.
So can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Information and options is not case management, is that correct?
No, there is an actual service under HCCBG that is case management. Information and options counseling is more giving the individual the power to choose what they need. So you fit them with all the information, you may even direct them sometimes, but I believe
But
at
it's
the
not.
core of that program, it is, it's to guide the individual rather than actually manage their care.
They're kind of
So-
helping with care navigation.
So they're not really performing operational advocacy or case management. They're saying, well, you might qualify for this program. Here's a phone number and good luck to you. Is that a?
No, there's check-ins, there's regular check-ins with the information and options counseling, and they do keep close tabs and home visits and things like that on the individual.
to see
So I
what-
do know, I mean, I know that they advise people who are going on to Medicare about different programs. Is that part of what we're talking about?
No.
That's not, that's so,
That's
and they
a-
also do ACA. We don't do anything with ACA.
Information and
So
options
that's all,
counseling,
okay.
it should be its own individual HCCBG program, and I don't believe it's funded. Information and options counseling, I don't believe it's funded through any other source except
Okay.
for us.
Except for donations.
We would love to have the opportunity to do outreach and do case management, but we unfortunately don't have that capacity. So we do case manage for clients involved in our services, but that's about it. So
Yes, there, when I was at Council on Aging, when Jen was there, we did not have case management, and we didn't profess to have it either. But what we did do was someone might call and say they needed help with food or something, and we would do a visit, and then we could see that they also needed these other programs and informed them of them, but we also took, we didn't just send them out, we took the application and we did advocate for them and tell them how they could rearrange things and just generally make their life better and be able to keep them at home. We didn't have the options when I was there either. We did a lot, we did, applications for food stamps at that time. I did applications for Medicaid. Meals on Wheels, all of these programs basically, including getting ramps so they could stay in their home. A lot of those programs they're not with anymore. We work with Habitat for Humanity, we worked with getting AC units and heat repair. All very important for them to be able to stay in their homes. So I'm not sure there's two there now, one's in training. It's a big county, as we all know. And there's a big need because people don't know how to navigate. Their children live far, far away. They call and they're lost. And so we could think out of the box too and get them where they needed to be and get them back on their feet as much as possible. Somewhere along the line, though, let's see, I it was after Jen left for sure, but somewhere along the line, case management, people believe that you did case management there, and I've never known that to be the case, much less how it got referred to you.
It could be a semantic confusion over helping someone
Yes,
get through SNAP applications and I've helped someone with these kinds of things, and those applications are often somewhat obtuse.
yes, somewhat,
Not well written.
yeah, yeah.
And someone who's sick, who's not on their game anymore, who doesn't have a caregiver, but even if they have a family caregiver, the family caregiver might not be that on the ball either, so.
And, yeah, never had to deal with these issues
Yeah.
before and knew and then they change in the
Yeah.
community too, so it's keeping up with that. So it's an important service that way,
So the question becomes.
but they aren't doing all of that anymore. They aren't they aren't doing food stamp applications, and that's what I've been questioning is. Cause I
What are
see
they
that they're
doing?
not doing
Right.
those. They are, my understanding is they are still delivering the food bags to the community, which is important. And they may just, I mean, during COVID, when we couldn't go to your home and see what you called about as your least need, but so we were just mailing applications out and then going over them on the phone with them afterwards. So I'm not sure where they're, does anybody know? Do you know where they're at with that? At this point with it, because the two are splitting the whole county at this point, which is a lot, so less services might be what's I don't know.
I mean, even if they're working like crazy 80-hour weeks, there's only so much you can do, given the nature of the bureaucracy that you're coming up against.
Yes,
So in terms of funding, see, I'm gonna go back to the numbers. And I'm looking at the units of service and I'm seeing, I mean, if they're not meeting their current level of funding.
Right.
And so the question I've put out to everyone is, do you support them with the hope that service will stabilize? Or do you say, I'm sorry, but but we're not gonna be able to meet your request.
That's essentially, unless we can very quickly ascertain what they're really doing with that money, how many clients they're serving, how well they're doing it, I don't see how we can do that. My gut reaction to this is to say, we're sorry, but come back when your world has stabilized. And service delivery seems, you can argue that service delivery is more consistent. And the question I did have for Billy though is, and I think Billy mentioned, Jewish Family Services does a little bit of this.
They do case management, yes.
And that would involve, okay, you need SNAP, you need Medicaid, you can help you with paperwork.
And they keep case management for the clients that go to the elder club, as well as the caregivers, as well as the people that receive mental health counseling, as well as the people that call, and they also have, it doesn't have anything to do with these applications, but they just are starting a new program, senior care management, that's gonna be very involved, where they have a care manager that goes to the home and provides care management and follow up.
and follow up. That's excellent.
To the Jewish communities. Jewish family service. And they serve everybody.
They don't, yeah, they don't,
Right.
yeah, their services. Actually, Eileen and I went and saw them and they put us into the elder club, thinking we were both there for the sit in on the elder. Oh, my God.
That's
Well,
hilarious.
we have that.
Yeah, right.
Senior. They just hired a new person.
Is there a legal or a professional definition of care management so that we don't throw the terms around indiscriminately? In other words, does care management by definition involve a caseworker who goes and checks up on the person once a month? Makes sure that there's food in the refrigerator, the place is reasonably clean.
I'm looking to Zach only because he probably knows the home and community care block grant. And because I know there's that huge document that has like 10 sections or something. So I suspect there's something in there. I'm trying to be conscious of time. I'm also, trying to, we were having this discussion, but also, we talked about what is the most vital services? Do we all
Right.
agree with Dan about transportation?
Yes.
Do we all agree with Dan about in-home aid?
Yes.
So,
And with in-home aid, if I can interrupt just a second. Last time it was split between the county and the block grant. If that just leaves me, we would have a whole lot more money to work with if we need the county. Yeah, that's because if the county's not gonna get it,
so what I see in their application and looking at the funding level is they are anticipating, or I shouldn't say that. They are applying for block grant and maybe the word is anticipating that the county will not come through with any funds. So,
I think it was just in case.
yeah, and I totally, I totally
Yeah.
understand it.
Yes.
I totally understand it. But I also would, for me, this is my personal opinion, not the opinion of the committee. People can come back at me, which I'd be happy to talk about, but you know, what has been their capacity and in terms to meet the needs and what is the price of that capacity? Meaning, for example, I know it wasn't a whole lot, but we had to give back money. I think it was last year. It wasn't a lot. This year, they're struggling only because of the storm. You know,
We're gonna, and I've been communicating with Ryan as well about, like, I'll be able to really give you a clear idea, because what is let me just put this out here. Has also happened is because some of the SSBG money got cut. Some of the clients, we had clients that were over 60 or over that were on the SSBG funding, and so we've had to move them over to HCCBG. So that's gonna look different next time. There will be more on HCCBG contract. So, but I'll know more next time about that. But that's just, we've had to move money around.
Well, I know that in the past, we have left these meetings and with a bullet point questions for some of the providers. So, you know, I would like to put that out for the group today that, you know, as we have these discussions, what specific questions that you think we want to ask the individual providers?
Should we just go through quickly and check off the ones that kind of fit Dan's argument? Would that be helpful? I mean, it looks to me like, well, Mountain Care Transportation, clearly, Buncombe County In-Home Aid, Meals on Wheels, Mountain Care Daycare, Mountain Care Day Health, congregate dining. And then he did also mention information and options, but, you know, there's the Jewish Family Services counseling perhaps, that could substitute for that.
Yeah.
And their respite, I guess.
Mhm. And that's a small amount that they're asking for.
And the respite, is that also would be considered part of the Center for Conscious Living and Dying? That's a question. I don't know the answer.
I'm gonna tell you my opinion on that real quick. Feel like there's a very close overlap with hospice and palliative care. With the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, and maybe I just only know from what I read. And you guys who maybe have toured there or have more experience with their services know more. I mean, I know about hospice, I know about palliative care, and it sounds very simple.
And I would have some serious questions about their budget. Maybe ask them to enumerate their salaries or something like that.
Really are going to be able to
Yeah.
capture
so-
these questions.
Yeah,
Thank
so-
you.
The conscious, so you want them to explain the salaries more?
Well, they said they said most of the services were provided by volunteers, but then they had. This is a pretty significant amount of money they're asking for. I remember the figure on their budget for salaries being pretty high. I don't remember precisely what it was, but it was a major part of their budget. Yeah, I remember that.
So the specific question is,
Who are they paying for what?
They seem very similar to hospice, but I know they include more with the family and public maybe after death too, services for the family? Okay.
And hospice provides bereavement after as well. You just have to connect.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how they would explain their differences
Right.
with hospice, because they did say that they work with
They
hospice.
do, right, but.
Yes, I would think they absolutely would have to, and so what are they adding? Because I
Right.
know they're adding.
And maybe, do they get Medicaid reimbursement, Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement?
I had go down this hospice stuff,
The hospice gets a chunk, but yeah, like a lump sum, but
there was no cost to the families, that's. Oh, the back today.
There is no cost to the family for their services?
Oh, they did say
Really? I know, I found that, yeah.
Yeah, I got the impression they work with low income people.
One thing we may need to ask them too, since these applications are supposed to be for home and community care block grant only, is which one of these home and community care block grant services they plan on providing? Because there's no block grant service for hospice, there's no block grant for palliative care, there's only these 20 services that are allowed.
Well, Courtney called me, she called Allison and then she called me and, they were gonna apply under in-home aid. And then, what was another
care management.
Oh, and information and options counseling, and I looked up care management, I looked up the standards. And I talked to her about it, and I sent her the standards, and I said, I would encourage you to look at these standards, because I thought that they fit under care management. And I even, and I even explained all the reimbursement with arms and everything, and what the criteria, because I was reading it to her and then I sent it to her and so they applied under care management because of what I said. I thought that was the best fit for them.
Well, given, going back to Suzanne, she mentioned the things that follow with Dan's recommendation, so. Who doesn't follow in with that Dan's recommendation? It turns out to be the Land to Sky Community Health Workers.
Yeah.
The Senior Companion Program. So number 5 and number 6,
Home repair
and then the home repair, which is number 8.
and 16.
16, they did not
They didn't.
submit.
That's right,
They did not submit.
And probably mobility matters. I don't know whether-
They qualify.
I don't think they qualify under home and community care block grant. It's from what I read of their application that Susan sent to me, they are wanting to go in-home and consult with individuals on how to do home repairs to make it safer and more accessible. That's not covered under housing and home improvement. Housing and home improvement is the actual project itself.
That was the telehealth?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
That's mobility matters. the new-
Right.
yes.
Right.
So.
They were doing all telehealth.
Can we request? Having both the Mobility Matters and the Center for Conscious Living and Dying to just, can we just get some definite yes or no that they are block grant providers? And
Yeah,
if that has been communicated to them. So. Does Mobility Matters, has anyone discussed with Mobility Matters? I appreciate your application, but you don't fit. And then the Center for Dying and Living Consciousness, this is the area that you're gonna be funded under. So if we just get confirmation on those two things, that'd be great.
Well, I mean, when I had the discussion, then I told them that, like, she was following my recommendations, so I might have.
So you feel comfortable that that it's a covered service? Under case management?
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
Zach will fit it too.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
From
I
what-
just was
From the
misunderstanding.
email that I sent you, I think that I said that Mobility Matters does not look like a covered service, however, Centers for Conscious Living and Dying could fall under care management.
I apologize, I've been a little lax with my emails, kind of stretched lately. So we will then, remove Mobility Matters from our discussion and consider them not eligible.
Oh, good, now we can find everybody with that savings.
He was commenting on the fact that that's a lot of money. He just,
I know, I was,
You could always also tell them to apply when county funding becomes available too.
I think that's a good,
That's a
yeah,
good idea,
excellent,
yeah.
excellent, excellent. So then, thoughts about the three that we just mentioned, the community health workers, the senior companion, and home repair.
Provide legitimate services, I think the question becomes, can it afford to fund even a hierarchy of these?
and I consider home repair very essential.
And it is.
I mean,
Just
just,
because, I mean, heat, a floor, something to keep someone in their home.
yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes the water heater falls through the floor. They have to move. I've had people in a nursing home that mountain housing went to their home and did things, and we got them out. We had a whole lot of other services around it, but they were intricate in that back in the day.
There's a
But
financial
then can we
incentive to doing that.
do what?
There's a financial incentive. To be able to do that service because it saves.
These people have nursing
Right.
homes.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, can we afford to fund them as a thing, but I think they're very essential.
When I've gone through this in the past, and in my head, I'm talking to myself in my house plans, basically.
Yes.
What I've done ultimately, and what I did for the first pass this time, I said, okay, these are the requests. What would a proportional distribution look like of the funds that we have? And that's been how I've started this exercise ever since the first year. And then what I did last year, when we were talking about, the Y programs and the hiking thing, then I, cut them out. And then we moved that other money around, but I don't see anything on this list that, from observation and personal experience as an advocate, that I do not see value in. All these things, we're talking homelessness, we're talking food insecurity, AKA starvation. Thank you very much.
Mhm. Respite for
Dying on the
caregivers.
street, I mean, come
Yeah.
on. And there are a lot of elderly people who are being evicted and winding up on the street. Imagine what that would be like at 90, having to find a bush to sleep under. So
And I am with you 100%, Suzanne. I look at these and they all are worthy. They're all very worthy. And that's what makes this job so difficult. I want to focus a little bit on this community health worker and probably have some questions for them. Because when I look at the budget, and this is where I don't know if she understands or the applicant understands how to use it, but total program revenue for prior year was entirely HCCBG. And I'm like, so the question I would have for the community health worker is block grant your only source of funding? And the expenses don't make sense because the expenses are higher than, well, there is no revenue. So the budget's not.
And was it two homes that, I mean, not homes. what
There are two apartment buildings.
Thank you.
There are two apartment buildings.
And that's
Asheville
just
Terrace.
the Asheville
Yeah.
Terrace.
But that program keeps people, the lower income people in their homes.
In the home,
Yeah.
in the community that they're in,
And I
that they
agree,
can afford.
and I agree, and I agree. I'm not denying, but my question is, are we the only
Budget,
source of
right.
funding? And you know.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, I just kind of a nudge that, hey, maybe if we truly are, then the nudge is maybe you need to go and start looking for other funding sources. If you wanna run this program and expand the program, because funding's flat, funding is flat, and people keep asking for more, because there's more need.
Because there's more need.
Funding's flat on everywhere,
Yeah.
not just.
And-
So are we making any progress today, guys?
We went around the block and looked at it.
Block and back. Yeah.
Well, I think, I think we agreed that fiscal legal will limit them to whatever it is we're required to give them. That answers that question. Mobility matters, we're going to suggest that they apply again for supplemental funds. And as to the rest,
More information and option.
yeah, I'd like to get more information, because if they can't, because of management problems, run a reasonably efficient process, and maybe we push that money to Jewish Family Services, who seems to be doing it.
Mhm.
I mean,
So how do you, what is the specific wording of that question for us? Because it's,
what specific types of assistance are they providing? Are they providing it directly to seniors, their family caregivers, or both? Who's doing the work? Volunteers or staff? If staff, what are they getting paid? How many hours are they putting in? Because that's a key. If I've got somebody working 80 hours a week, that just tells us they're making an effort. With what little they have, they're trying to do the job. What else? How many clients do they serve? Is there a bias in the kinds of help they provide? Maybe it's mostly requests for a certain type of assistance versus something else. Maybe it's all over the map.
well, I think that's a lot of questions to ask, so can we maybe distill that down?
And they would not be having volunteers doing case assistance or. I don't think, I mean, their volunteers are like caller ride volunteers or the Medicare
Delivery.
people or the ACA volunteers. Like, they didn't have, they don't have volunteers providing resources, at least when I was there.
What if we ask them what
We're talking
resources
about,
that they are advising people about? What resources are they advocating for? Are they doing Medicaid? Are they doing food stamps? Are they letting them know, I'm probably not wording this properly, but are they letting them know what available resources there are? Are they aware of what there are? With the turnovers and people not knowing, I'm not certain of how much knowledge they have of what is out there and available.
People who've
any
never-
better than Jewish or I don't know, but I'd like to know.
Yeah, people who've never been on social services before or didn't grow up in a neighborhood with a lot of neighbors on social services before have no idea.
None.
Food stamps, what's that? It's called SNAP. Oh, okay.
Mhm. Is it welfare? No. You know.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so in the application, they say they are going to provide 10,000 point of contact with older adults. And they anticipating serving 2,250 unique clients. Is the question then 10,000 points of contact, is that 10,000 phone calls?
That's,
That's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, please confirm, is that 10,000 phone calls?
And it may be if you have a client who needs medicated SNAP and a rent subsidy, that they're helping them with the applications for those three things.
And is that one point of contact or 3 points of contact? So that, but then they go on unduplicated clients, 2,250. So the question I have was, what type of service are they doing? What is a typical, if there is anything typical, up for those 2,250 clients? And they,
what services?
yeah, what
What
service?
services are they supplying to them?
Yeah, they are serving them. What is the service?
Yes.
Thing that they're doing?
Yes.
And they do have performance measures, which is great. They will have at least one completed referral to a program that addresses needs and you know. How are they collecting this money? Because I think that when I was in front of the commissioners, I did have my first go round was giving them stats. So,
I would suspect it's self-reported.
well, did they do a survey? Did they do?
Well, they used to.
Well, they used to, yeah.
Yeah, don't know.
You know, did they do the survey? Did they do a survey? Is it like just every person is it like going online and every person that calls in gets a feedback email that says rate our service or something? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if we can get those little bit more information about that, would that be okay, Suzanne?
Based on how everything's pushed back so much. Do we have like a free pass, kind of like, we have like another month really to finalize these things because of. If they're not doing anything until June 3rd, then it pushes back our deadlines too, no?
That's what I'm.
I don't know, I asked someone who said. Let me check, which means just check with somebody else, and she said, but I think the answer is gonna be, it needs to be in like normal before it goes to the Board of Commissioners for approval, but I'm not 100% sure. So she's gonna find out. So we can pass that on once we know.
Okay. Which would mean, if it's as normal, that would mean we have to make a final decision next meeting.
Is it the 23rd or the 30th? 4th or the last?
It's the board.
4th, so it's 23rd.
And then the budget formal proposal will come out like the next week.
Well, but you gotta remember, the formal proposal from the budget is only for county services.
Yes, but
So-
yes,
So
we would know if there was some money for
in home aid,
and that does change. I mean, we give them 500, we can't take it back, and then,
well,
so I don't know.
I'm not exactly sure also what the bylaws state regarding holding meetings, but you're also able to hold special call meetings in order to, if you feel that between now and the next one, you can't figure it out, you can do small ones in between. Henderson County is actually going through that right now. I just attended their first deliberation of applications. They have another one April 1st, and then another one I think 2 weeks later or something like that. So I just want all of you to be aware that you can have those if you need them.
Can we get a definitive answer as to whether we have to have it in at the regular time?
Perhaps not today.
I know not today.
I'll let you know as soon as I know. I mean, I can send an email to Susan as soon as I know the information. As soon as I get a word on that.
Well, there's an expression, something like plan for the worst and hope for the best.
The best.
So I think in terms of planning for the worst, we have to have these done by
Yeah.
next committee meeting. Hope for the best?
Finished on that,
Yes,
23rd.
yes, and only the 1.7, if we're gonna agree to stick, to say, we're gonna go out on a limb and think the feds are, and state are gonna give us 1.7.
I think that's a nice logical place to start. It's a number,
Mhm.
you know, and if at the 9th hour we hear that it's less than that, we can apply, 0.8 whatever factor to everybody and scale everybody down. Portion. We have to do it.
Reminder that 0.83 was FY 25 actual allocations, not
Right.
0.6
Whatever it
request.
is, 0.67, 0.84, whatever, it turns out to be. Because God knows how big a hit we might take.
Mhm. Well, I think that probably calls for a motion. That I need to get a vote on if people. So the motion and discussion would be one, do we look at these block grant folks? And say, we're gonna estimate at $1.7 million. And if that's the case, then I'd like everybody to come and vote on that. So the motion on the floor is to maintain the $1.7 million as what we are gonna base our allocation of block grant money.
Do we need a motion because that's already like determined that that's what we have, we were spending. So are we really changing to 1.7 or 1.7 the way it was originally, do we need a vote if that's the case?
Well, I'd like to get a comfort level that everybody's on board with 1.7,
That it's an estimate for now.
that it's an estimate for now, and we'll have to be Indian givers. I mean, I don't know if we have to be Indian givers, but because if we don't have to notify them, it's all the timing issue,
Right.
So if we don't get it, we reduce it based on a calculation for everybody.
Right.
And then the providers don't hear about it until it's after the fact and finalized. Is that kind of how it's always gone, Zach?
And who's that we do?
Can I ask a question before we say that? I just want to have clarity on what we've accomplished. We've mixed ability matters, right, from this. I don't know about what we've done about physical legal and have we touched any of the others? So mobility is definitely out. Physical legal, we talked a lot about and how
Funding them.
minuscule we are part of their budget, so are we considering them or not? And then are there any others that we're considering allowing, or is the rest we think are saying? I just need to clear on that.
Okay. I will state what I think I've heard from the group, and I want folks to tell me whether it is correct or not. So regarding fiscal legal, I got the impression that we would fund them, but only fund them at the level that we are required from block grant.
Yes.
And that last year, or this fiscal year in FY 25, that would have been what, almost $10,000 or $11,000.
Will that change for 26? Or is
It
that,
could, it depends on what comes in from the feds. And the state. So I don't know, maybe the guesstimate, if we're gonna fund a minimum is, I don't know, 10, 12. I mean, so we know Mountain Mobility gets 500. We're gonna say, based on what past experience, Pisco will get less than they've requested in the past, and they will get, I don't know, 11 or 12. I'll let you guys decide when you do your individual sheets. So I think we've accomplished, we know that, yes, Mountain Matters, Mobility Matters is gone.
oh, yeah.
Mountain Mobility has to have the 500.
Yeah.
Pisco Legal, we're gonna fund at minimum required. And everybody, including me, is struggling with, they're all important. But we do like Dan's hierarchy, transportation, in-home aid, meals, adult day, and information and what is it? Information and options.
Well, yeah.
We wanted to get more information.
Right.
Right.
One of the other thing gets consider, I think, is some people requested like 200% of FY 25. Some requested, an extra 15%, 20%. There is some strategy sometimes for shoot for the moon and hope for the stars kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, we see that every year.
Okay, I guess that's all individual cities. Okay.
Yeah, we see that every year.
And are we gonna treat in-home aid as if they aren't gonna be funded county?
What did I say?
I don't know.
Plan for the worst,
Yes.
hope for the best.
Yeah.
Plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So the process that we've done in the past is we've had our discussions. We've filled out our spreadsheets, we've sent them in to me, and then I do a consolidated one. And then we kind of see where, I mean, from the numbers, it's almost like a ranking. It's a ranking, I mean, it's your personal ranking, I'm gonna spend money on X, so I'm gonna put that much more money in my little spreadsheet. And the other thing we agreed on is we're gonna use the 1.7 as we have in the past.
Right.
Okay.
And we have 5 minutes left in our meeting. My stomach is churning with all these decisions to make. And
Can we just ratify your understanding of what you just stated, our understanding to be?
okay, how do we do that? I don't know.
Oh, we were counting on it.
Yeah, do we need a motion?
I think we build a consensus.
Yeah,
I don't have a clear idea, so I don't know that it requires a motion.
Okay, so Greg, what was our consensus? Let's
We're
recap.
gonna go individually, we're gonna. Mobility Matters is out, I think the Center for Constitutional Uniting is out, is that correct?
No.
No, it's not out.
We got
It's still
questions for
okay.
that.
Okay, this is all okay, all right. Mountain Mobility's in at 500,000. And Fiscal Legal is gonna get a minimum, which, figure 12,000 a month, round number. And then the rest we figure out based on 1.7. Want to fight for them? Okay, good.
And we have questions for the community health workers. The only topic we really didn't discuss, and we don't have a whole lot of time, is the senior companion program. So folks want to look at that.
Okay,
So
do you have a deadline on when you want this before April 23rd, or each of ours? So do you have a timeline when you want that?
I don't know, the Friday before.
Good Friday? Ooh,
Yeah, the Friday before is.
the
Yeah,
18th,
yeah.
my birthday's at 19. 70. I can't. I guess I need senior service. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's only a number.
It's all now.
No, it's a number. It's a nice round number.
Yeah, so am I.
So,
So the Friday, Good Friday, you said it.
well, let me get into my,
Friday's the 18th.
April. The next meeting, okay, our next meeting will be on the 23rd of April. Are we doing another 2-hour session here?
Well, the idea was we have this meeting so we could hash things out, and we just sent out hash today, and really, that one hash been good to me, so it would, I think it would be in person, I think.
You,
I think it should be in person because
Yeah.
we're still hashing.
okay,
That was
so,
the idea, is to have the interaction, where I'm just not looking at the Brady Bunch on my screen.
all right, so the 23rd will be in person here. And 2 hours, put it on the books for 2 hours and see.
At the most, we don't have to stay there till 5:30, oh, it's not 5:30.
Yeah, no,
We're
I'm
done, we're
fine.
done, yeah,
Okay, so
essentially.
the next meeting is the 23rd. 2 hours in person here, and I have to remember that Zoom needs to be set up anyway because of the live stream. And yes, if y'all can get your individual spreadsheets to me, I'll take a screenshot, I'll take a mail, and send it in snail mail, I don't care. I'll get them, try to get them by the 18th, and we will hope for the best that we might actually hear something about funding.
So 3:30 to 5:30 on the 23rd.
To hash out and at this point, provide final numbers for the block grant folks. Okay. Okay, all right. Very helpful, very, very, very. I don't know, I'm very appreciative of all of you guys. It's a really good group. I can't say that enough. I really can't, and I mean it from my heart. So thank you for all your hard work. We're all in the same boat, being worried and, as Dan said, sad and maddening.
Yeah.
So I guess, we'll adjourn and